So my phone lit up with 7 XRP ETF filings all getting updated on the same day, right as a huge legal cloud over XRP suddenly vanished. Coincidence? I nearly spit out my coffee here because this felt too perfect to ignore, and I had to find out if XRP's about to have its biggest I told you so moment ever. So picture this, right? I'm chilling at home, scrolling through crypto news, and I see a tweet, multiple asset managers just amended their XRP ETF applications simultaneously. Now, immediately I'm thinking, hold on, what just happened? 7 heavyweight firms, from CoinShares to Grayscale and WisdomTree, all making a move together on XRP. Now that's not normal, right? That's a coordinated dance, and get this, on the very same day, a court finally put the Ripple versus SEC saga to bed. Boom. Legal clarity for XRP just like that. And if you followed XRP, then you know that that lawsuit was the giant elephant in the room. And suddenly, it's gone. Now, one analyst is saying that there's a 95% chance, that's 95%, that the SEC will approve an XRP ETF. 95, let me say that again, 95. My jaw, of course, dropped. Could this be the real deal, or is this all just hype? I had so many questions at this point. So, is XRP about to pull a Bitcoin and send everyone's portfolios to the moon? I kind of felt like I was watching a thriller where all of the kind of plot lines were converging, and I needed to know how it ends. So yeah, I dove into the rabbit hole, figuratively speaking, of course, not literally, and what I found absolutely blew my mind here. Now, let's start with these ETF filings then, because honestly, this was the first clue that something big is up. On August 22nd, while I was probably on my second cup of coffee, marching across Europe somewhere, a bunch of financial heavy hitters decided to update their paperwork for spot XRP ETFs. We're talking CoinShares, Grayscale, Franklin Templeton, WisdomTree, Bitwise, 21 Shares, and a firm called Canary Capital, all in one day, all doing the same kind of update. It's kind of like 7 kids in class all changing the answers on a test at the exact same time. Either they're cheating or the teacher told them the correct answer. Now, in this analogy, the teacher is the SEC. So what did the SEC whisper to these ETF hopefuls then? Essentially, make your XRP funds more flexible. Right, the updated filing says that these proposed ETFs could handle either actual XRP tokens or straight cash when creating the fund shares. And when people want out, they can redeem in cash or in kind, meaning in XRP. Now, if you're not an ETF geek, that kind of might sound like boring technical fluff, but here's why it really matters. The SEC probably had concerns about how an XRP fund operates, right? Liquidity, market manipulation, who knows? But by allowing both cash and in-kind transactions, the funds can function more smoothly and transparently. It basically is that the issue is saying, hey, SEC, see, we can run this fund in a way that you're comfortable with. No sketchy business promise. Now, it's kind of like a direct response to feedback then, right? And we know that because a well-known Bloomberg ETF analyst straight up said that this wave of updates was almost certainly due to feedback from the SEC. In other words, the SEC didn't slam the door, they gave notes. When the strictest teacher gives you notes instead of an F, that's a good sign that you're still in the game. Now, another industry voice chimed in, calling it a very good sign. So across the board, the vibe was positive. I'm seeing here, at least sitting here, I guess, reading all of this thinking, the SEC might actually be okay with an XRP ETF if these guys play by the book. Now, this alone, had me a little excited because it flips the script from a flat no, never, to well, maybe, if you do X, Y, and Z. That's progress at the end of the day. Now, the timing of this was the second huge clue here. All of these filings got their makeover on the exact same day at the exact same time. In the US Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit approved the motion to withdraw the SEC and Ripple's appeals. The translation for that whole sentence, which was pretty badly worded in my opinion, the case is done, right? And there's no more appeals. There's no more what ifs. The Ripple versus SEC lawsuit, which hung over XRP's head like a dark cloud for over 3 years, is officially over. And guess what? Ripple, and by extension XRP, basically came out on top in the legal battle. The big takeaway from that case was that the judge saying that XRP itself is not inherently a security, at least when sold on exchanges to regular people. Yeah, let that sink in, right? Now that was back in 2023, but until now, there was an appeal looming from the SEC. Fast forward to August 22nd, 2025, both sides threw in the towel on the appeals. End of the story, right? Ripple is, for regulatory purposes, in the clear, about as in the clear as Bitcoin and Ethereum, which the SEC has kind of admitted aren't securities. So suddenly XRP isn't an outlaw anymore, it's just another big crypto coin like those two. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the ETF companies then for a second. You've been eyeing an XRP fund for ages because, hello, there's an investor demand there. But you held back and at least kept kind of getting rejected because the SEC was like, nah, XRP is under litigation, it's too risky. Then, you know, literally the moment, and I do mean the very moment that the legal flog lifts, you hit the submit change button with your ETF applications. It's as if they were waiting on the launchpad and the legal clearance was the kind of go signal from the mission control. So one XRP community kind of figure kind of pointed out that the coordinated timing, he basically said, look, these guys were obviously waiting for XRP to get the all clear legally. Now that it's happened, they all kind of pounced. And what does that tell you? It's, according to him anyway, it tells us that the chances of the SEC, approving these ETFs just shot up to around 95%. 95%, I'll be honest, when I kind of first read that, I would have chuckled and thought to myself, all right, buddy, 95% is extremely confident, right? Did we get a leaked memo from the SEC, or are we just pulling numbers out of a hat? I mean, come on, I'd admit optimism, but I'm the type that also, like to say that 95% sure about something in crypto. I'd raise an eyebrow, right? Crypto has a way of humbling even the cockiest of predictions. But let's humor him for a second here, right? He's basically saying that an appeal is, almost, a kind of done deal. An approval is a done deal. What I do agree with is that the sentiment is there, right? And the odds, did actually improve quite dramatically. Basically, it's not 95%, but it's definitely a heck of a lot higher than it was before these events. Now, you know that I had to check the price after hearing all of this, of course, and oh boy, XRP did not wait around. The price went nuts. So I pulled up my exchange on the app and saw XRP had rocketed to $3.08 within hours with this news hitting. Over $3 again, right? I had to double check I wasn't looking at some random stock or something, right? To put that into perspective, XRP hadn't broken $3 for quite a while. I mean, we've been hovering around, we're bouncing around, we had 366, but it's not really kind of been able to get above it. And this is another reason that we're back above. It was kind of, I guess, like just seeing that kind of confidence come back into the market. Now, the chat in my crypto community was exploding. People were, of course, posting rocket emojis, memes of XRP going to the moon. You name it, it was there. It was pure excitement, right? Some people who've been holding XRP for years were like, finally, our time has come again. It's honestly kind of felt like a reunion party, I guess, after such a long battle, right? And it wasn't just retail investors either getting hyped. Big players, right, the so-called whales, were making moves too, right? There were reports of huge XRP transactions flying around. Whales were accumulating, which is fancy talk for buying a ton of XRP and packing up their bags. And when you see whale activity spiking like that, it usually means that they know something, or at least believe something big is on the horizon. Now, I can almost, see, or at least imagine, these kind of institutional whales picking up their phones, right, calling their brokers or logging into their kind of exchange accounts like Kraken Pro, which, by the way, is the exchange that I'm using at the minute. Now, full disclosure though, the link in the description is an affiliate link that supports the channel here. If you do decide to use it, it obviously costs you nothing extra. It's just a way to support the channel. Anyway, they're not messing around, right? If they think that an ETF approval is coming, they want in before the floodgates actually open, right? Volumes went through the roof as well. Everybody and their grandma suddenly wanted a piece of the action, at least of the XRP action that was. Now, it was like a Black Friday for XRP, except it was a random Tuesday in August. Now, before we all start collectively kind of drafting, our kind of I'm rich tweets, let me kind of just put a pause here for a second and do a quick reality check. Now, this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. It's important that you do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so we had to get that out of the way. I know you just don't like to hear it, but you know the drill at this point. You've got to stay safe, stay smart, and be smart. Now, let's get back to the exciting stuff. With the disclaimer done, let's talk about why this moment feels like deja vu in the best possible way. Because I swear, I've seen this move before. Remember Bitcoin's journey to an ETF? Well, for years and years, a Bitcoin ETF was the holy grail. The SEC just kept rejecting the proposals left and right. Too risky, too volatile, market manipulation, concerns, lack of regulatory clarity, all of the usual reasons. Sounds familiar, right? Well, eventually clarity emerged. Bitcoin isn't a security, it's treated as a commodity, and the market got more mature. Then comes 2023, 2024, and suddenly giants like BlackRock and Fidelity start filing for Bitcoin ETFs. That was a huge signal that the tide was turning. And indeed, lo and behold, the first spot Bitcoin ETF got approved. When that happened, Bitcoin's price went bonkers. All new all-time highs, massive influx of money, the whole 9 yards. Now, look into 2025 XRP. XRP just got the critical clarity. It's not a security in the eyes of the law. Closed case. The SEC, which once sued, over all of this, is now apparently willing to talk terms for an ETF. Multiple filings are in play, and these issuers seem pretty confident since they're spending time and money to keep the applications alive and up to date. Right? This is exactly the scenario that Bitcoin was in maybe a year or so ago before its ETF approval. One crypto expert actually said XRP is currently in the exact position Bitcoin was before its ETF approval. Think about that. Right? If he's right, we're basically standing on the cusp of history repeating itself, with XRP as the star this time. And if history repeats, what comes next? Possibly an SEC approval and one heck of a price rally. Now, nothing is guaranteed, but man, the prices, the pieces I should say, they are finally falling into place. Timeline-wise, here's what we're looking at, right? The SEC has final deadline in October 2025 to make a yes or a no decision on several of these XRP ETF filings. So in a roughly couple of months, a few weeks time, we're going to get an answer. And that's why you might hear a lot of chatter about October being make or break for XRP, right? At least the ETF dreams. So mark your calendars, set your alarms, prepare your memes, whatever you've got to do. It's coming up fast, and if I had to guess, I would say that they're leaning towards approval if all conditions are met, rather than facing another, protracted kind of fight that they might actually lose. Right. One thing that intrigued me though is that BlackRock hasn't filed for an XRP ETF as of yet. This is interesting because BlackRock was the major catalyst in the Bitcoin ETF race. For XRP, so far it's been other players leading the charge. So maybe BlackRock's waiting to see if the SEC gives a nod to these first, or maybe they're like, we'll stick with Bitcoin and Ethereum for now. Who knows? But if tomorrow you kind of see a headline that BlackRock's filed for XRP ETF, just know that the game has officially gone mainstream. Even without them, though, right, the existing proposals are backed by some pretty big names in finance. And here's a crazy number, right? Some analysts estimate that if these XRP ETFs launch, institutional investors could pour in over $5 billion pretty quickly, buying up XRP for these funds, $5 billion. So think about the buy pressure that could create on XRP's price. I'm not saying that it's going to happen overnight, and estimates can be off, of course, but it gives you some sense that this isn't small potatoes. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, and an ETF like this kind of is the bridge for that money to come on into crypto in a regulated and easy way. It happened with Bitcoin. Billions flowed in via ETFs and other investment vehicles once they existed. Could be the same happening here for XRP. It's looking more and more likely that that's the case. Now, at this point in my research adventure, it hit me that just how remarkable all of this whole situation is, right? XRP went from being the kind of black sheep of crypto with a lawsuit that had it effectively in a timeout for the US investors and institutions to actually possibly becoming one of the first altcoins to actually get a spot ETF. That's a 180-degree turn. That's kind of like watching someone go from zero to hero. And as someone who's kind of been following XRP through all of the drama, this actually feels vindicating. I remember when the days of reading FUD that XRP would, never actually survive the SEC and that it was doomed. And yes, for a long time, holders felt like XRP was felt like riding a roller coaster blindfolded. But now the horizon is actually looking all right. It's looking pretty bright, right? And I've got to tell you this, I'm excited, right? I'm telling you to stay cautiously optimistic, but it's hard not to feel a little bit giddy if everything does play out as we kind of see it here today, right? It's all pointing in the right direction. And for the next few weeks or so, it could be historic for XRP and its community. Just imagine, right? An approval XRP ETF, mainstream news covering it, a surge of new investors who were previously too scared or unable to kind of touch XRP, finally jumping in through their brokerage accounts. It could be the kind of watershed moment, and beyond the kind of price, there's a validation factor like XRP getting that institutional stamp of approval after the smack that it went through. There's been a kind of poetic justice to all of this. Now, of course, I know nothing is ever guaranteed until the SEC's filing has a big fat approved on it, right? But we could be getting all the hype and the SEC might still say, nah, not yet, or even delay the decision. So I'm not counting my chickens before they've hatched, of course. But the difference now is, even if there's a delay, we sort of see writing on the wall. The SEC's main issue, the legal question, is resolved, and they've actually guided proposals here. It kind of feels like it's not if, but when at this point. And that when could actually be as soon as October. Now, I'm going to be on the kind of edge of my seat, I guess, until then, right? And that's definitely something to be watching for, right? One thing I know for sure is that I'm going to be keeping my eyes glued to any updates. And that I'm going to be chatting with you guys in our community about every single rumor and every hint that comes out along the way, right? So it's been a bit of a wild ride for XRP already, but I have a feeling that this is just the beginning. So smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you all in the next one.